Hello, this is Unit 5. We have only one unit to finish the subject. And this unit, you're going to see something very easy and very related to the previous unit. It's the indirect questions, okay? It's very, very similar to something we saw in the previous one, in the reporter's speech. Do you remember when we transformed questions from direct to indirect, that you say, you change the verbs and the order, okay? So this is what we are going to see now, the indirect or direct questions, okay? In this occasion, we have the contents of direct, indirect questions, but the practice with with indirect questions, we are not going to do it today exactly, but in the class when we have the face-to-face class, well, face-to-face or video class, okay? So we're going to remember, I'm going to remind you what the direct questions or indirect questions were. Direct questions is an interrogative that can be answered directly. Do you remember that there were two types of questions, yes, no, and WH? So in the other one, we didn't see the WH, but we're going to see them here. For example, did you finish your homework? Have you called your friends? So they're direct ones with an interrogation mark. Please remember something. In English, you cannot put interrogation mark at the beginning of the sentence, and you sometimes forget because in Spanish you put both, but you can't. Okay, this is a big mistake. So these are the type of questions that we didn't see in the previous one. In the previous unit. So yes, no question. Do you like milkshakes? Do you expect an answer with yes or no? Question word questions, for example, what, where, how, is what we call WH questions. The answer to these ones is not yes, no, but is information about something. Okay. Do you want a milkshake or ice cream? You have to choose one. Oh, well, these are choice questions. These are when you have to choose one of both, okay? You have examples here of yes, no. Can Simon swim? Has she finished? So this is a kind of review of what we have seen in the previous units about questions with modals and the purported speech. Question word and auxiliary, subject and main verb. Where did she go? So these are the questions with WH, okay? Why have they started the class? When will they have, etc. The question word is who. Remember this. Who taught English last year? Who is driving the car, okay? In this kind of verb question with who, there is a slight difference, okay? Who are you? Okay, who are you? You don't use the auxiliary do, it's quién, okay? Who are you? But remember something, when you put who do you, it's a quién. For example, who do you like? A quién quieres? So who without do and who directly with do or without do changes the meaning, okay? Forming questions is when with WH, or why are you in this class, or with the auxiliary do, why do you like it? The choice questions is when you have to choose between one or the other. For example, do you like this or that? Did the kids eat rice or vegetables? Remember the pronunciation of vegetables, okay? It's not vegetables, it's vegetables. With the verb to be, you choose one. Is it true or false, okay? So far, hasta ahora, so far, it's the direct ones. But now we're going to see the indirect ones that they are very used, more than you think. Are a little more formal. Is when you don't want to ask directly. For example, I wonder how old you are. Me pregunto qué edad tienes, not directly. That is a bit impolite. We use them when talking to a person we don't know very well or in professional situations. And I would add that we use it when we are lost, for example, in the street, we use indirect ones too. Could you tell me where? Excuse me, can you help me? So these are indirect ones. Well, here's the example. Where's Market Street? Could you tell me where Market Street is? Do you remember the change of the tenses? Yes? Okay. The tenses is what you have here that I explained in Unit 4. Okay, it's the change of the verbs. I hope you remember. In indirect question rules, when it's an indirect question, we don't use auxiliary verb do, does, or did. Do you remember that we say, I wonder where you live? But the question was, where do you live? But when you put it in the indirect question, it's not do. Also, you can see that the verb is open in the direct question and opens in the indirect question. Okay. What time does the school open? You don't put opens. I would like to know what time the school opens. So don't forget that. It opens because it's not the auxiliary do. So the rules, sometimes sentence is more of a statement that invites the other person to give information than a real question. It's real, sometimes it's not a real question. That's why sometimes it doesn't take an interrogation mark. I wonder where my children are. Okay, I wonder where my children are is not a question. It's something indirect that you are wondering, okay, but you are not asking anyone. For example, why did you move to Madrid? I was wondering why you moved to Madrid. Probably the other person doesn't answer, but it's indirect question. The auxiliary verbs can be used in both the direct and indirect question, but in the direct question comes before the subject. Let's see the example. How has he managed to pass the subject without studying? This is a direct one. Do you have any idea of how he has managed to pass the subject without studying? So remember the structures changes a little, okay? As the same way that in the previous example, this one is opens. In this one, it changes to have, okay? Now, when you have to pass from direct to indirect questions in an exercise in class or in your life or in the exam, sometimes you can't find the structure of or the variety of verbs for changing from direct to indirect question. You always say, I wonder, or I want to know, or can you tell me? So I suggest some expressions here. Could you tell me? Do you know? I was wondering. I would like to know. I would like to have more news. I would like to have more information. I wonder whether, okay? So there are some examples of questions, okay? Yes, no direct questions, if in indirect questions, but this is the same that you studied in the previous unit. So the indirect questions is if, like in Spanish. For example, are your parents coming to the meeting? Could you tell me if your parents are coming to the meeting? So so as a summary, the indirect questions are used as a very polite way or indirect way to ask something, and it's not that direct. Sometimes when we ask something in a direct way, it's very impolite. For example, it's very impolite to say, how old are you? Okay, but I would like to know how old you are. So probably the other person answers or doesn't answer. So in this presentation, you don't have any exercise for you to write or to give a solution. But what we are going to do for Blackboard for the next day, it's to write a dialogue, a short dialogue with, for example, 3 interventions per person that includes at least 2 indirect questions. So a short dialogue, and you upload it to Blackboard to check that you saw the presentation with a short dialogue with 3 interventions per person. So you can say A, B, or Mary, Peter, but at least with 2 indirect questions, okay? And that's all. This presentation and this grammar is shorter. So thank you very much, and I see you in our video class.